Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this webinar as a part of the webinar series that ASSOCHAM has started on timely and meaningful topics. The session today is being moderated by Shri Rakesh Kaul, partner PwC. Over to you, Mr. Kaul.
Thank you, Varun, and thank you everyone for joining this interesting conversation that we are going to have. COVID-19 has become a black swan event that is forcing government and enterprises to rethink their supply chain in a way that it can sustain an environment of uncertainties. As an optimist, I would like to refer to the current environment as a phase of possibilities for all of us to innovate, adapt, to not only survive, but to come out stronger. With that context, may I invite Dr. Lavneesh Chanana, Chairman ASSOCHAM National Council of IT, ITES and E-Commerce, to deliver his welcome address, followed by our chief guest, Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General NIC, and thereafter Shri Girikant, Director SAP India Private Limited, for his introduction into the industry. Over to you, Dr. Lavneesh.
Okay, thank you, Rakesh, for the introduction, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General NIC, my colleague Giri, Rakesh from PwC, and everybody who's attending this webinar. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be a part of the this webinar on the important topic of supply chain. Just as a background, when in ASSOCHAM we were actually debating on the need to create awareness among industry and allied stakeholders about the new normal that COVID has created. We were actually debating what are the key things that have changed, and we realized that there are three key areas that have changed. One is the whole finance management in terms of cash flows, in terms of the other area is the employee management in terms of working from home, remote work management, productivity, and whatnot, including remote team management. The third area that is this area that we are talking about in terms of supply chain. Supply chain, the issues of the variability in customer demand, the issues of the management of challenges of logistics, etc. Everything. So we thought, why not get a government and an industry perspective together on the way the supply chain operations and management will change. That's one. Second, on the potential new forms and the new normal that supply chain management will take. Third, while we are clear as to why we are doing and what we will be doing going forward, most importantly, how do we ensure the realization of those changes in a programmatic manner? And the current understanding that each one of us has is the realization of the new normal in supply chain would not be a single stakeholder effort. It will be a multiple stakeholder effort. It will be a combined effort of government, industry, academia, research, consulting, service industry, all put together. So how is the most important part in terms of managing the overall logistics of supply chain? Now, so from an industry standpoint, if I talk about, so COVID actually has from a technology industry standpoint, if I really talk about it from an ITES and e-commerce industry, COVID has posed challenges, but COVID has also thrown up a number of opportunities. And we are now seeing an acceleration of the attempts of companies to move from digitally mature to digitally intelligent. That's where people are actually thinking that's the way forward. So for some time, we had this thought process that probably this is something futuristic that we are talking about. That futuristic has been pulled in advance in time, and that is becoming. So what will change? As we see, we've been so focused on the value creation through products and services. We will now move to value creation through experiences. We were thinking of innovative business models as a way of transformation. We will now be thinking of innovating new organizations that will actually lead to. We were always worried on collaboration and teamwork and all. We will now start thinking very soon on machines as co-workers. That's a big shift that we will see coming forward. Now coming to the important area of supply chain. Now in the case of supply chain, what factors that COVID has brought to surface when it comes to are many. One, as I mentioned, is the variability in the demand, whether it's the consumer, citizen, or the end user. Second is the whole challenges of movements and logistics. That's the second area which suddenly has got the attention of, of, of both government and industry as to how to solve. And that has led to the third point, that's my raw material, parts, and labor shortages, and hence the need to dynamically adjust my supply chain through strategies of finding alternative suppliers, localization of supply chains, and whatnot. That is something that will. And there is another very interesting element that has surfaced in particularly in few products in terms of the variability in pricing, and that is something called surge pricing that we see in the shortage. In the time of shortage, some suppliers have resorted to surge pricing to ensure the variability in the demand and ensure the cash flows when the demand is low. The other point is the linkage to employees. Once the employees are home, and a lot of companies have undergone restructuring, have in terms of the contribution to supply chain, there is this thought process on how do we do more with less in terms of workforce. That's another, and obviously cash flow challenges are putting. So from a supply chain management perspective, what are the questions? One, how do I ensure reliable replenishment? How do I ensure my certainty in prediction on the replenishment and the availability is something. Second, in the dynamically changing world, how much inventory do I stock and how and when? And should I stock at all? That's the question that we have been asking. Third is the most important area. How do I expand the supplier network? And more importantly, how do I utilize the supplier network more efficiently, given that all suppliers may not be performing to that optimal levels? And the interesting area of local sourcing and to some extent regionalization and localization of supply chain has also surfaced thanks to COVID. That is, do I need to be dependent on cross geography, cross boundaries sourcing models, or do I need to build a capacity to ensure certainty in the pattern of supply, which will meet my variability in demand? That is another question that has come up, and this is for study. This is for study, and this is not to India alone that we see. It is happening across the geography, and people are thinking, can we have something that we can look at this? So and also, how do I control this pricing element? In terms of the surge pricing and all. So some of the ways that people are already talking about. One is the whole need to mitigate the supply shocks. Second, to mitigate the demand volatility, or at least manage the demand volatility. Third, now we need to make supply chains safer for employees. Now we need to make the operations work safe in terms of. So some of these areas are catching the attention of business professionals, and this doesn't have a company level repercussion. It may have a country level repercussions, and some pundits are predicting that COVID may lead to the redistribution of global wealth, given this whole rethinking that we are going about. So that's where we thought, if we have a government perspective coming on in terms of the technology, the stimulus package that we see, and you would have seen in the stimulus package, we have huge stimulus on the infrastructure part in terms of airport modernization, coal, mineral, and that will definitely provide a big boost to the overall supply chain management scenario. The MSMEs are being strengthened to FEL. So there is a big push in terms of the intent and plan by the government in the package. The execution will be the key. How do we take it forward as a program would be something that we will have to see. Now, with this as the context, let me invite Dr. Neeta Verma for a government perspective first, and then we hand over to Giri from an industry perspective, followed by an interaction that we will have moderated by Rakesh. Over to you, Dr. Neeta Verma, for your chief guest address, on this very, very important area on supply chain that we have been discussing today.
Thank you, Dr. Lavnish, and good morning to all of you. You know, we are going through very challenging and unprecedented times. I hope all of you are taking care of yourself, taking care of family and friends, particularly now when we are getting to relax these lockdown norms. It is all the more important that all of us comply to guidelines of using masks, use of sanitizers, and keeping the social distance at workplace as well as at public place. This way, we'll not keep ourselves safe, we'll keep our family safe, our friends safe, and our society safe. So request all of you to please comply with this. See, among all these tough times, the one thing which has really assumed a lot of significance is the use of technology. There has not been any time in the past where you could find the technology as an enabler, whether it is our social lives, whether it is our personal lives, or whether it is our professional lives, or even helping government to manage this pandemic situation and its various dimensions. Let me just try and give you some examples of it. You know, when we had this initial lockdown, which was kind of fell upon it all of a sudden, but then at the same time as government, we had to manage that whole lockdown and all other associated, and as well as the spread of check the spread of virus. The one thing which was immediately needed is people were not able to move. Many people were not able to move. And even if they had been essential services, you had these containment zones, restrictions, and border restrictions and things like this. So what was immediately needed, and suddenly the demand for virtual meetings picked up like anything. I mean, we went crazy the way these virtual meetings were kind of happening, connecting people from all over the places. This also coincided with financial year closing, and then a lot of files had to be clear. We had a product which people are using e-office, but they were generally using from offices. Now they had to from homes. So you had to enable them for the secure access. You have to enable them to be using these things by themselves. When you use in office, you always have people around to help you navigate through those systems. While it was tough, but I'm really glad the all support teams of NIC and other came up and made this happen. And we could very successfully close our financial year. All departments make their funds utilize and close financial statements very, very satisfactorily. Another thing which happened, which is very important, is Arogya Setu app, which is primarily a contact tracing app, and essentially it helps you. It basically alerts you if you have come in contact with somebody who's COVID positive. By getting to know much in advance before you have symptoms and all, you are not able to take enough measures for yourself, but you can also self-isolate and also help your family and friends and people at the workplace. And as a whole, you can then help in contain the spread of virus, which is what all government efforts have been all around. And now Arogya Setu has also come out to be a kind of an app which is presently being used by around 12 crore people in India. And not only this, it's also helping. It has also become a very big outreach tool because it is working in 12 languages. So to explaining, because all these pandemic, you just say quarantine, you just say self-isolate. People normally do not understand when you're talking of a scale of India. So this also became where they could get, when they were reporting their symptoms, they could get personalized information in terms of what is that they're supposed to do. I mean, are they in safe zone or are they in amber zone, and they need to self-isolate or check the doctor. So all those things really help in, making those messages reach and making people giving personalized advice on the same time. Also, the new feature which started is helping each one of us to go, when we walk into any new geography or any new zone, we get to know what is the status of COVID positive people in this area. So that also kinds of alerts us that that we need to be safe in case there are too many people in COVID positive. So Arogya Setu has been one of, and recently, as you all know, because there were some concerns of people about privacy and security and all those things. So this is something which we did, which is unprecedented for the first time in India and maybe in the world, where an app which is being used by 112 crore people is being made open, whose code has been made open for public scrutiny. And I'm really glad that we could do this with the help of all teams at NIC and all our extended teams who are helping us with this ACT. So, and we've been all, as NIC state centers and NIC headquarters, we've been associated with state governments, district administration, as well as central government in almost all aspects of management of this pandemic, which begins from communication, awareness, to testing protocols and testing app for testing, quarantine management, home isolation, COVID hospitals, to going forward to distribution of civil supplies. And what we have seen that and even then distribution of subsidies, that because many of these things we could do because we had digital platforms in place, we had all ways and mechanisms in place. Like if you look at our public finance management system, this is a system which is a gateway to connect to any bank in India, whether it's a nationalized bank, whether it's a multinational bank, or it's a cooperative bank or a rural bank. Every bank is connected. So any scheme, any central or state government, anytime wants to transfer to money to any of the accounts, it just have to pass information to that gateway, and it takes care of rest of the things. So availability of the platforms has been has really made many of these things easy. Also, it has also shown two things which personally I feel. One is that I mean, even if you look at our schools, I mean, our school children have started to adopt this means of taking exams and taking lessons and all. So adaptation or adoption by society of digital technologies, we always thought perhaps it's still a kind of a privilege to certain segments of society. But when during these tough time, when there was no other means of interacting or availing services or transfer of funds or any other means of government services, we've been able to serve people with even deep rural segments of the country. So two things. One is that people have been able to adopt technologies much more faster than we thought. Second thing which has happened is that it has also given a testimony that our telecommunication infrastructure has also worked very well, and that is the reason we all have been doing many more Zoom meetings and video meetings and all which we have been doing maybe in our other past. So there are few things which are kind of have come out of it. Now coming to the topic of the day, which is supply chain. I think we have a lot of experts on this panel who will be talking about this. To me, basically, there are four things which you need to do. First is that you need to bring enough digitization in your supply chain so that you have visibility of your supply chain end to end. That means right from your raw material to finished product to its suppliers, which could be tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. Now, if you want a complete visibility, it will not be that you have your own ERP or your own SCM system. You need to onboard all your suppliers, their intern suppliers, because these are kind of cascaded effects. When you have everybody on board and you know who's in which geography, then only you'll be able to actually understand and do some kind of a prediction that, because see, we all have to understand this situation of COVID-19 is, we all have to live with it for some time. It will also change. The peaks will change from geography to geography, from one state to other state. This will vary. Containment zones will also vary from place to place. So at any point of time, it may affect any of the geography, and which may in turn affect your supply chain. But if you have a good visibility into your supply chain and you have an ability to do some kind of a prediction around it, and if you can build some kind of agility in your system, I mean, as we go forward in terms of your contracts, in terms of changing your logistic routes and all those things, you will be in a much better position to do it. And that is what I think work and the use of and so in this, what is needed is, because you will have large number of small suppliers, medium and small enterprises who may not be right now so digital savvy or so technology savvy that you'll be able to onboard. So I think that is where, from government or otherwise, we have to put in efforts that how do, first of all, enable them onboarding, maybe doing some kind of a cloud-based platform through which we can offer these services on a very, very nominal basis. Second, how do we do their capacity building? And if there is any kind of a policy which could be done through which they all can be easily onboarded. So that's something I feel we need to do to bring everybody onto this. Now, even if we do all those things, even as it was mentioned earlier, we'll have some dependencies on these supply chains beyond beyond our geography or beyond our region. In that, as your government has already had program, called Atmanirbhar overall scheme. Then there was also vocal about local, that we should try and source material as far as possible from the local geography or from the local region that way. So I think a more effort and more initiatives could be taken towards those things. From government side also, we are trying to see that that how do we bring more and more these things locally. In fact, you'll be very happy to know that today, later in the part of the day, we are announcing 3 schemes to promote electronics manufacturing in country, and I'm sure that's going to help the manufacturing this thing. We already have a good success story as far as manufacturing and assembling of mobile phones in this country is concerned, and I'm sure this will give further fillip to all other kind of electronics which is needed, which we are using. As I very often say, that in today's life, each one of us interact with almost 10 to 12 computers every day, whether it is your TV, whether it is washing machine or your mobile, your laptop, or when you're booking your tickets or booking your cabs. It's all systems and electronics all around. So if you could do, and then medical electronics is going to come in a big way. Lot of electronics will come in supply chain also, in terms of IoT devices and all those things to help you keep stock. So I'm sure this manufacturing thing will also help. But my key thing is that we should all work towards bringing our MSME sector on digital, enabling them to be part of these supply chains, because then only you'll be able to have end-to-end visibility and predictability of the things. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
May we request Giri to please talk about the industry perspective.
Thank you, Rakesh. I hope you all can see my screen. I just want to check. So thanks, Nita ma'am, for explaining what is expected and how do we gear up ourselves to the new reality. So I just want to take you all through coming from the industry side for making the supply chains agile. What are the various things that we can do? I'll just try to quickly take you through that. If we look at the value chain, today we have problems in many areas. We have problems with respect to the suppliers. We have problems at the ports. We have problems with respect to procurement and sourcing, whether it is the domestic or whether it is the international sourcing. We also have issues with respect to manufacturing, the number of people who can work in the plants. And then we also are facing a lot of pressure from the finance, where improving the cash flows and then making sure that we don't have excess inventories, and inventory, every unit of the inventory is working. Then we are also concerned about the safety of the employees in the manufacturing plants. On the logistics side, we have availability of the trucks as a big problem, and whatever trucks that are available, they are taking longer time to reach the destinations. and then with all these micro containment zones, there is a need to get visibility into that. And then we are also having the demand related issues when it comes to the dealers and retailers. While some demand has evaporated, we are trying to prime the demand. So if you look at the complete value chain, there are disruptions at many places, and sometimes it is overwhelming for us. Which part of the supply chain do I address? Again, the context is different for different companies. And then here, I want to spend the next 10 minutes or so on what is the role that technology can play. Yeah. So when it comes to the managing the cash flows, you have your accounts payable, you have your accounts receivable, and then you also have your inventories which are getting liquidated. There are some investments that you would have made, and then there are some inflows that are expected. Maybe there are some borrowings. So it is possible for you to, there are tools that are available to take all these cash streams, and then you can do a lot of simulation. The simulation could be, what if I delay my payment terms? Okay, what if I delay my payment terms only for some suppliers? Maybe only for select people who can absorb that kind of a thing. And then if I have a small time supplier, immediately I would like to pay him so that he survives in his business. So that kind of differential treatment, with that, what will your cash flows look like? So there are cash management applications which help you with that. Similarly, it will also help you assess with respect to the forex management, how much of amount of the forex is needed, and then should you buy in advance, and if this is the kind of volatility that we have, how do we hedge it? So all these are possible with the cash management applications, which will help you manage your working capital more effectively, and then do lots of simulations. So that's one tool which will help in managing the cash flows effectively. Then we have a lot of this international trade. We are also talking about a lot of shift happening. Maybe I want to reduce my international trade. I want to go more regional. Maybe I don't want a very longish international supply chain, but I want to make it more maybe only within Southeast Asia, or maybe only within South Asia, or maybe only within India. So if I'm trying to do all that, how do I manage these new sourcing strategies? With that, what is the kind of risk that I will end up with? And are the parties with whom if I'm finding some alternative suppliers, the parties with whom I'm doing the business, are they screened in advance? Okay, so all these things you will be able to assess. There are international trade management, they're called the global trade management solution or global trade services solutions. These are the solutions that can help you as you identify alternative sources of supply, maybe in the international trade. They will help you assess with respect to the risk. They will help you assess with respect to what is the final duties and tariffs, and also whether you are complying to whatever the government rules that are there or not. Then you have the third set of applications which are related to the planning. And today we are talking about the so-called L-type curve, or a V-type curve, or maybe a W-type curve. People are talking about various kinds of scenarios. If that is the kind of outlook that I have for my demand, in that case, should I stock well in advance, at least for some of the running products, or should I just manufacture in time? How do I plan? How do I plan my supplies? How do I plan my finances? How do I plan my inventories? How do I plan my capacities to be in line with various demand scenarios? That's a mammoth task, and that's where tools can help in providing what should be your strategy under different scenarios. Because humanly, even to prepare one single plan, it is impossible for us. It takes a lot of time. These kind of integrated tools, they bring together different departments in the organization, and then they will help us prepare for various scenarios. Then we are also talking about finding alternative suppliers. If I have to find the alternative suppliers, maybe one way of doing it is I go to the Google and then start looking for it. Maybe there are business directories. There are many such business directories that are available. You want to find PPE, or you want to find some masks, or you want to find maybe for your MRO supplies, or maybe for your direct supplies. There are tools which will help you quickly identify who are these alternative suppliers. And if you are one of those suppliers, you should go and register yourself across all these portals that are available, so that for the people who are looking for these products, it will be visible. Then we are also talking about how do I manage this source of supply disruption. So if I take all my suppliers, which of these suppliers are under risk? Not all the suppliers could be under risk. Only some suppliers could be under risk, and the risk could be with respect to his raw material availability, his manufacturing capacities, or his finances. So how do I get all this information into one particular thing so that I can ask my buyers to go and focus on those high risk suppliers? And then maybe proactively I can take some action. Maybe I can go and help that supplier, or maybe I can go and alien some finances, or maybe I will go and find some alternative supplier, or maybe I will increase the raw material. So there are solutions which will help you look into your supplier database and then assess the risk. They crawl the web, they get all the information, they read the financials, and then they prepare some kind of a risk assessment. Another important thing is we are all talking about the employee health and contact tracing. So how do we ensure that? Contact tracing is one particular thing. The other one is when he comes to the office, we want to make sure that he is in a safe environment. Then it is a mammoth task. It is today there is no single person who has figured out how to do this particular thing, because the knowledge is distributed across different people. There are guidelines that come maybe from the government agencies, but they don't know how exactly should I restructure my warehouse. So that's where we need to combine all this. Those guidelines can be translated. If I have to ensure social distancing, or these are the areas in which I can do it. So that is a kind of I'm taking the guideline. Me as a warehouse supervisor, I can work out the detailed restructuring of the warehouse activities. So these are the solutions which combine the guidelines with the individual warehouse level restructuring that has to be done. So today, when we are talking about it, we are using the same approach everywhere. But instead of that, maybe I have some high risk activities. There are some low risk activities. For the high risk, I will provide some PPE. For the low risk, a simple mask would do. So that kind of differential treatment has to be brought into the place. For example, if you go to the hotel, the high touch people could be the ones who are at the reception. Or maybe the people who are taking care of the housekeeping activities, they are at a high risk. So the kind of protection that you will offer will be different compared to a normal person who is a chef in a kitchen or something like that. So these are that is called the risk control. Taking the guidelines, how do we translate it into the individual area level safety? That is where the employee health and safety solutions help. And you also heard about all these contact tracing applications and solutions like Arogya Setu. They will help us a lot when we integrate them with our enterprise solutions. And the good news is now it is open source. We can explore how to integrate with that. Logistics challenges, Neeta ma'am also talked about it, and Dr. Lonish also touched upon it. How do we bring together? If we want the supply chain agility, we need to bring all the partners together. We have to make sure that paper-based information transfer should go away, and the information has to get transferred digitally. We spoke about EDI structures, etc. But today there are technologies which can do far better. EDI assumes that the other guy also has a computer or a sophisticated ERP system. But today, if most of the people are working with the mobile devices or maybe a web UI, there are business networks who can integrate. It could be my logistics service provider, it could be my supplier, or it could be another 3PL who is providing a lot of services with respect to the import and export. Then how do we de-risk these supply chains? There are simulation models that are available. What if I change my source of supply? What if I cut down my lead times? What if I relocated something? What if I, instead of doing all that, what if I build up buffers? So there are simulation models which will help you with all these kinds of strategies, and then you can evaluate which one is good in the short term, which one is good in the long term. So those are the simulation models which will help you with de-risking the supply chains. So that's probably that's a small bit of what technology can offer. There is much more, and now we need to work together to see how do we take some of these technologies forward and make it work for the supply chains. So with that, I hand it over. Yeah, this is.
Thank you, Giri. That was really very interesting. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us an overview. Thank you, Giri, for such an interesting overview. Thank you, ma'am. It was really interesting to hear how the government is shaping to solve for this problem. Thank you, Dr. Lavneesh. And may I ask Dr. Lavneesh, I found this word very intriguing, digitally intelligent. And what to me it occurred was that going forward, the companies will have reduced dependence on human intelligence because more and more dynamic environments are around them. Therefore, they will need a machine interface to help them convert a simple procurement officer function into a holistic command and control operations, because they are now just not procuring and forwarding, but they are handling so many new variants of the whole issue. So what is your, in your view, how would you want to elaborate the challenges of being digitally intelligent, given that in our country we have digitally uninitiated, which is a large part of MSME. There are digitally intelligent or matured word that you used, and then both of them have to move to digitally intelligent. So Dr. Lavneesh, your views on this, please.
Great. So when I said digitally intelligent, Rakesh, what I meant is with the increasing level of automation, the repetitive tasks that we had are now being taken care of by machines. The example being the customer care in banking, the normal responses are all now being handled by machines. The human component, as we talk about, is getting focused on more high value tasks, and that is where somebody may say that we are digitally uninitiated. At the same time, we have an opportunity of creating a niche space for ourselves in the high value tasks. So from a it's a multi pillared exercise that all of us have to go through. It requires skilling, reskilling of the workforce to understand what it will take to move to the next level of coexisting with machines, and then from that perspective become intelligent enterprise in terms of dynamically real-time realignment of business processes. Skilling is one area. Second, as we move more and more to machines, cybersecurity and the distinction between cybersecurity and public safety, as a common domain would become the key for success. And third, this is most important, we will now need to lay a far more emphasis on the broadband and the telecom infrastructure that we have ever thought about, because we will need to now take this to the grassroots level. And we have seen in many, whether it's Arogya Setu or it's Aadhaar or it's otherwise, we have seen banks provided to stakeholders as an option. There in India, the pickup rate is pretty steep, pretty fast. Now, once we show that what's in it for me to the end stakeholder, whether it's the MSME or an end user or a consumer, things will move forward in the digital world, and we will see a culture shift from mere digital optimization as the way to transformation to becoming digitally intelligent as a way of competitive differentiating, as I see it.
Thank you, Dr. Lavneesh. May I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Neeta and NIC at large for having given us Arogya Setu. It is our kavach to safety. And ma'am, taking this conversation a little forward, is there any discussion of such kavach for supporting MSME, and also with a focus on, as Dr. Lavneesh said, that affordable and reliable connectivity will play a big role in ensuring that these supply chains are connected digitally. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, I think you are on mute. We are unable to hear you.
Thank you, Rakesh. As you know, government has announced this large umbrella scheme of Atmanirbhar, and there are a number of initiatives into it. While it has initiatives to enable MSME sector in terms of various financial incentives and packages to help them, but and there has been also a lot of push in terms of moving a lot of manufacturing in India. As I told that on electronics, we are today only around 6 schemes to promote. And I think this success of electronics manufacturing can also be extended to other areas. Lot of, if you remember, there are a lot of things which we were items, our day-to-day use, we are producing in India long time ago. But over the time, for some reasons, those things have not continued. Maybe we could revive many of those things. So those schemes to financially incentivize, but in all this, technology is now going to play important role for them to come to a level playing to be really competing with the other players in the industry. We need to digitally enable them. And as we have seen in our country in the past, many of the small e-commerce companies, startups have been doing have been able to do wonderful things and have sometimes evolved into solutions, which all of us are using. So I feel this MSME sector can be focused, and government is definitely working, and we can also look into various ways through which we could enable all these people who could be the suppliers to the larger companies in terms of raw materials or the various components, or who themselves could be producing some small day-to-day consumer items, and how do they really manage their logistics, their supply chain. Just to give an example, in the last month for Ministry of Agriculture, we had launched an app called Kisan Rath, which is nothing but a aggregator app where any farmer could put what is the kind of produce and which he will like to sell, or maybe will like to send from here to there if he already has an online deal through a national agriculture market. And these message used to go through an app notification to all the truck aggregators or transporters who are a part of it, and then anybody can take that bid and quote for the price and do. So this was done to facilitate farmers because that was a harvesting season, and I was made to understand it's doing pretty well. So maybe these kind of platforms could come more and more to help these small scale producers or MSME sectors or people who are into slightly interior areas. And I completely agree, telecom infrastructure is going to play a very important role in all those things. We have a good infrastructure, but I think we need to do lot more. We have this BharatNet program in which is there for quite some time, and as I understand, lot of focus is now again being put that how do we put this, because in BharatNet the fiber optic has been laid till the village level. If you could lit this and connect with the mainstream network and make it live, it will really connect, it will make country as a connected country across its length and breadth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neeta. That was really very insightful, especially about the platform that you mentioned about for the agriculture and our farmers. It has been really very useful. So Giri, we've been talking about a lot of technology, and any ideas of how we could make this technology affordable for the sector we are talking and into MSME as of now? In the conversation. So any ideas, elaboration on how we could make it affordable for them?
All right. So we are all talking about today the cloud solutions becoming more and more affordable. Because you cannot expect a small organization to invest heavily in the IT infrastructure. They will not get all those necessary IT skills to manage that. That always has been the prerogative of the large companies. So the big hope that we see is the availability of these cloud solutions, where most of the people can readily subscribe to that and just use it only for the functional people without being very IT heavy. That's one hope that we have. And when it comes to the plant automation kind of technologies, the cost of those solutions has come down. So that is another ray of hope. And the third one is any innovation has to be a lean innovation. So there is no point in taking big bets. Start small and always invest in that small investment which will yield large results, and that will always be helpful. And the fourth one is related to the quite a lot of these applications being available on the mobile devices itself. So if I am able to get maybe if I am able to get all the transporter collaboration being available on a mobile device, so that if there is a shipper who is giving a request, I'm able to see it on my mobile and I'm able to confirm it there itself. Having these mobile applications and using the mobile applications for the collaboration between different enterprises, that's another ray of hope. So there are lots of considerations. How do I get in the value chain? You always have small enterprises powering the supply chain. So how do we digitally enable them? It is the cloud, it is the cost of reduction of these IoT devices and the mobile applications. All these will play a very large part.
You're wonderful, Giri. I think you summarized it very well. In India, with the kind of mobile penetration we have had, if we want large-scale adoption, and for small and micro enterprises to also start using technology at large, we will have to look at enabling them through mobile technologies. So taking this conversation forward, Dr. Lavnish, we did talk about the use of technology, different kinds of technology, and we have also in the past seen that for India, technology to succeed needs to be adapted and adopted for India. And in that context, do you see that there is a need for government to set up some kind, for government and industry to come together and set up some kind of COE, a sandbox where our innovators, startups, established companies, academicians can come together and start creating solutions which are more India-specific solutions to solve for all the things that we said, and especially, talking to MSME, because this point that all of you made was a great point, ma'am, that you also made, was identifying supplier. Today, we have visibility perhaps into all those which are up till GSTN registered, but beyond that, our visibility into supplier is that much more limited. And therefore, we will have to come together to solve for that. So what's your view, Dr. Lavnish? Is there a need for industry and government to come together on this?
Yeah. So, Rakesh, in India, there are two broad issues that are specific to India, given our maturity of digital adoption and given our, I would say, maturity of digital application. So one is the whole issue of awareness, in terms of people's awareness and a consolidated effort, collaborated effort to create awareness about what these solutions can do. Second is and that's unique to India because the population base is so high that not everybody is equipped to understand the importance of technology and the availability of technology solutions for the transformation. It's because we have to handle a huge population. One issue is awareness. Second issue is access to low-cost technology. That is where, and if we see some global experiences from a program perspective, what you mentioned in terms of a collaborative effort between government and industry, if we see the Industry 4.0 journey for Germany, they set up this platform for Industry 4.0, which has representation from everybody, from political groups, from industry, from academia, from government, from trade associations, from trade unions, labor relations, everybody. They divided the whole journey into 9 broad areas, and then they came out with specific recommendations. So from a program level, that's quite possible. Now on the COEs, the point of COEs for catering to local, this thing is concerned. I would say we we should proceed with caution and focus more on creating a demand which will need a focused attention on creating these solutions, because we have in the past we have done many COEs. The nature of this COE formation has to change now, and it has to be outcome focused then more than a perception and a branding focus that we have done many COEs together. Now this government luckily has been very receptive to industry collaboration, and we have seen some good moves, and now there is a growing realization that we have seen setting in that it is government industry together that they can achieve this target. So it will be very interesting to see how this unfolds in the next 2 to 3 months or 6 months, and how this concept of COEs that you mentioned actually takes shape.
Thank you, Lavnish. And I think you made certain very specific and very pointed asks here. One was about the awareness, that awareness at the scale we want it to happen is not easy in India. We are at the end talking about 1.3 billion people, and it is not easy for us to make them aware. So how do we solve that? How do we systematically look at giving access to people and improving low-cost technology being available? And third, which I really loved, was these COEs or sandboxes. How do we make these initiatives more accountable for outcome rather than just proliferation or advertisement of certain technologies? I think I kind of agree with you. And with this, may I request ma'am about her point of view on how does she see government and industry coming together to set up something where technologies can be experimented with specifically for supply chain. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I completely agree with all the panelists and with you that we really need to create awareness at scale. And when I scale, I really mean it across length and breadth of India, of the potential benefits of these technologies which they can really leverage on as they go forward in their endeavors. So awareness is definitely and is the number one thing which needs to be done. Second thing is affordable access, which is also important. I think we have been all talking about how do we bring affordable solutions, how do we make our access affordable. To me, there's another thing which is also very important is simplification of these processes. When you have small enterprises, and if we want to digitally enable them, we need to see that how do we really come up with solutions which are pretty simple to onboard, does not really need too much of a paraphernalia to be onboarding. Cloud is definitely one way through which you'll be able to save them from any kind of ICT infrastructure or dedicated teams. But even the use of the solution, which when you go at scale, the existing solutions maybe need to be having a look at it, not only in terms of language enablement, but in terms of simplicity of its user experience is also something to be done. Another thing which I was coming to my mind is that if we think that large scale we have to enable people with all those things, we could also do some kind of a skilling program. I mean, because we should focus more parting these skills to maybe people who class 12 pass, or who are some kind of a vocational school kind of a pass. If we could enable them, and through them we could make this kind of a workforce available to these small industries in far-flung areas of India, that can also build an ecosystem around these places to do it. So, I mean, Center of Excellence is definitely a good idea, but I think this Center of Excellence should surely have a different avatar than usually those fanfare, those high voltage Center of Excellence. I feel they should be close to those people where they can be more of experience centers, where they can come and they could kind of explore these technologies, understand how is because many a times outreach programs one can do, but seeing it yourself gives you much more confidence and things like this. So we perhaps have to think of a kind of a formation of these Center of Excellence in a form which really helps people at the ground, and which really enables them, also helps them on board. And also, if I feel some kind of a skilling program could be introduced at this thing. And I was, as I'm talking, I was also thinking, then we have in this class 12 this e-commerce and business studies and all those courses which children do. Maybe if you could introduce, we have an IT computer science course in this, but that's more on, you know, learning the language and learning the databases and things like that. Now last week some AI component has come. If you could do some of this part also there, that in those business studies, the use of technology, how it can help in doing business, that will also, I think, will help us in creating this awareness and the capacity building at the ground.
Wonderful, ma'am. That is really very, very thought-provoking. That how do we not only address for today, but how do we create something for future as well by getting our children exposed to e-commerce rather than just technology. Use of technology for commerce is what point you made. And I think I will also take this moment to congratulate government on programs like I Got COVID, a training platform which got set up perhaps I think in less than a week, and which has made a huge difference. So Giri, as we are coming towards the closure of this, what is your view, and I think we of how should government and industry come together to solve for some of these challenges, and what would in your view be the new avatar of this COE or a sandbox within which the companies can play and co-create?
Yeah, that's a nice idea. We can, you have the enterprise applications, and then you have the government systems. It could be a GST system, it could be an Arogya Setu. And then we need to work on these use cases where the information has to flow from the enterprise solutions to the Arogya Setu, or maybe the government systems. And we should be able to fetch that information back into our enterprise systems. So that kind of, when we work closely with the government, we can provide the use cases. What is the information that I'm looking from Arogya Setu to ensure the health and safety of my employees? Where I'm taking the case of Arogya Setu, but it could be any other application within the government domain. We can come up with these use cases, and as long as the government comes up with those APIs, we can easily connect, pass on the information there, and fetch the information back into our enterprise solutions, and then increase that so-called digital connectivity. So while we complain quite a lot about the agility and the kind of speed that we want in the supply chains, etc., at the end of it, it is all because of the flow of the information. I'm not able to react because the information is not flowing to me. And if we ensure the flow of the information smoothly and digitally, then that itself will bring in quite a lot, 10 to 12 days. How did they do it? We all know that coming up with a particular building requires many people working together. You have the high-level design, you have the low-level design, and then you have the people who are working on the construction. And all these people, they have to come together. And a major element there was that particular interoperability. The moment we solve this problem of the interoperability between the supply chain partners and the supply chain and the government, then we will be able to solve many of these information-related problems. And your idea of COE or a startup ecosystem or a sandbox is the place where we can realize those use cases, show the value to the industry, and then take it forward. So there is quite a lot that we can do there, and I like that idea.
Thank you, Giri. And the way you put it out, what comes to my mind is UPI. What UPI did for the financial sector, which is a set of APIs to solve for isolated or siloed information to come together and for everybody to act. Is there a need for this sandbox to ensure that information exchange happens in a way that it helps solve for problems as they emerge, rather than try to solve point-in-time solutions. So a great idea. I think the convergence on that industry and government should come together, solve for the asymmetry of information, and help each other and help supplier to talk to each other and solve in time for catastrophe to happen. But I think it is a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Over to Dr. Lavneesh Chanana for summarizing and thanking the panel. Thank you so much for all the wonderful comments that we received. Thank you.
Thank you, Varun. Do we
Thanks,
take questions from the audience, or we can formally close?
We have. I am just making you the organizer. Then you can see the questions.
Okay.
Can you see the questions on your right?
Questions, yeah. 1 minute. So many.
So if there are many, Dr. Chanana, take the easy ones.
No, there are issues of network also highlighted here. One minute. The question is, how can we start the process at grassroots level? How do we start it at? We are leaning towards digitally intelligent, which will lead to digital transformation. How can we start the process at the grassroots level? I think we discussed this, Rakesh, and that question has already been answered. 1 minute. Very important point. And I think, Giri, you can answer this question. How do you see the application of digital twins in the supply chain sector? Very good question. Maybe, Giri, would you like to take it?
The digital twin is a very interesting concept, and let me touch upon what do we do in the digital twin. You can create anything as a digital twin. It is nothing but you have the physical reality. Your physical reality could be a supply chain, it could be an equipment, or it could be a factory. It could be any entity that you take, and then you are representing not all the features, but select features of this as a digital twin. And on the digital twin, you are experimenting. You are tweaking certain parameters, and then you are seeing, if I do this, what will happen? Then you understand you can do quite a lot of experiments that you cannot afford to do in the real life, and you can do all of that on the digital twin. The moment you are able to do that, you will get some insights, and based on those insights, you can take the decision in the real life. So that's how you can use the digital twins in your decision making. Now, this digital twin, it could be for your equipment, it could be for a motor, or it could be for I can create a digital twin of a blast furnace, okay, or I can create a digital twin of a distillation column. So there are process people who understand the nature of this. Those are the people who take the essential elements of the physical reality and then bring it into the digital world. That digital twin also connects to your enterprise, because it is not possible for you to feed all the data that the digital twin requires. So there is a connectivity that is established, and then you do all these simulations on the digital twin. So that's how it helps, and that's something which people should explore.
Ma'am, there is a very interesting question for you, ma'am. It says, and I think we all of us kind of skipped this in our talk, that is on GEM. So the question is, can you throw some light on GEM and the role that GEM can play on supply chain transactions, particularly around MSMEs?
So GEM, which is Government e-Marketplace, is basically government's platform to enable the suppliers of small to big items on a common platform. It has a very, very low qualification criteria. Anybody can come and register themselves and undergo that very simple scrutiny process and start putting it. And to promote startups, GEM has a separate section where the qualification criteria or eligibility criteria have been advised to be kept very, 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 very simple. And another thing which GEM does is that it helps you bring categories of very niche category products, which you can bring it, and where you will only have will have many suppliers, and that way provides a platform to sell or to or onboard the products, which whether it is hardware or software or our day-to-day consumable things onboard into it. As far as supply chain is concerned, I think as far as government procurement is concerned, GEM can definitely become a good platform to support these small scale suppliers to not only bid but also manage their lot of ancillary functions on the GEM by providing an extended module to that. So GEM can definitely do, and that is what I was essentially saying, you know, that we need to have, one thing is we need to have this API based system so that anyone can connect to anyone's system. We need to have very simple form mechanism of onboarding these all small scale producers or industries onto these digital technologies. If they all are digital, and then we have these API based exchanges and information exchanges, like I was telling you, this Kisan Rath, where information can easily and seamlessly, frictionlessly flow across all these places, and everybody gets an equal opportunity when this kind of a demand is being projected. So definitely, and GEM can be one of that alternatives.
And a related question, ma'am, and this is slightly off the track. That is there a plan that NIC can consider providing data center and cloud services to the SME sector? So I don't know whether you take it or not, but I think this is an interesting question.
No, I mean, I would definitely wish to do this, but somehow our mandate does not. But I had already spoken to MSME about it. In fact, they have one program. I'm not really up to date as I'm speaking to you today, where digitally some kind of a scheme through which and incentives also to enable all these MSME sectors to come on board and also have access to all those basic minimum tools which you need to run your business, where supply chain will become one of. So the scheme is also is already there. I will, I mean, in view of this, I will again talk to MSME and find out if something more. As in terms of enabler, in terms of formulating that scheme and help people on board, NIC definitely can support, and we will definitely look into it.
Thank you. And the last question, maybe Rakesh, this is a consultant's question response that is required. Maybe you can pitch in. And the question is, what is the impact that you see will the non-availability of the migrant laborers will have on the supply chain? We are already facing huge supply, disruption.
Well, I think that's a great question, and yes, we are staring into this situation where there is a supply-demand gap. But I think it is also an opportunity for rebalancing and reskilling of a lot of our people as they go back, as the new normal sets in. It will require for us to create those kinds of clusters where those kinds of migrant workers can stay, hone up their skills, and remain safe while they earn a livelihood. So I think it will require a holistic view to ensure that demand and supply is managed through right skilling, is what I believe it is, because I believe that COVID is going to be with us for some time. We cannot wish it away. So therefore, our supply chains or our workforce will have to adapt, and our policies will have to adapt to this new normal.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you on behalf of everybody, Dr. Neeta Verma. Thank you for taking time out and being with us. Your points were really valid and grounded. One can get a clear idea and indication of the kind of effort that is going on within NIC to actually realize the digital view. Thank you for all your kind words of advice to the audience, and we surely look forward to the potential for NIC to play a larger role now. Even the digital will be the way forward, and we keenly look forward to that. Thank you, Giri, for your industry point of view and coming out with technology solutions. And obviously, thank you to Rakesh, for moderating and actually for those thought-provoking questions, some of which one had to think and answer, in terms of managing and balancing both the sides. Thank you, Rakesh, for being here. I like to thank all the for taking the time. With that, we come to the close of this webinar. Thank you once again, and we look forward to our next webinar. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.